First Samuel is the bridge that ties us from the Judges to Kings. First Samuel ties us in from how do we go from these men and women who have been raised up as judges to now we have a monarchy where there is a king. So when you want to know that in the Bible, you're going to look at First Samuel. It's that transition of leadership. And so we go from a theocracy, God leading, to a monarchy where there is a king that leads. And we see them transition. So one of the keys of the book of Samuel, one of the key words is transition. Because in 1 Samuel, what you're going to see is the transition from a theocracy to a monarchy. You're going to see the transition from Samuel to Saul to David. You're going to see several transitions where they go from one place to another place. So when I look at the book of 1 Samuel, one of the key terms is transition. It's about how they transition. Does it make sense? And so now, and we're going to see the movement of the history of Israel, because remember, this is part of the historical books, so we're seeing a chronological history of how Israel is developed and each king that is put now in that place. Now remember this, you don't have to type all this out, because you can just purchase the slides. So you don't have to try to write it all down and everything else, because as you're writing so fast, what you're doing is you're probably not listening, and you're missing that. Am I making sense? Makes sense. I'm not mad at you, but don't try to be cheap and write everything down. All you're gonna get is a hand cramp. All right. So now we see this shift. We see this shift, transitioning from kings and from judges to kings. Now, understand that? So, 1 and 2 Samuel is the transition or the gap between Judges, the book of Judges, and Kings. This is how we got there. All right. And so now, and you're going to see how we go from one bad king to a king called David. So you'll go from a king that started out disobedient, that started out obedient, Saul, that went disobedient, and we transition from a disobedient king to an obedient king, David. Am I making sense? And so you're going to see this. So when we look at the book of 1 Samuel, this is all about that. What's the key word? Transition. And so now we're moving now from this place. Now when you look at the book of Samuel in the Hebrew Bible, it is also called the book of Kings or the book of Kingdoms. So if you look at 1 Samuel and you combine it with 2 Samuel and you combine it with Chronicles 1 and 2, if you look at the traditional Hebrew text, what you're going to see is there are 4 books of the kingdoms. And all it's doing is telling you how they went from this king to this king to this king and to this king. But most importantly, you're going to see how they went from being united under David to then being split after Solomon. And Israel then splits into 2 kingdoms, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. So during this time, you're going to see how all that went down. Am I making sense? So it's called the book of, some Hebrew Bibles call it the book of kingdoms, not because there are several kingdoms, but because we are transitioning from a time when we had a united monarchy under David, under Saul, then under David, and then under Solomon, that then gets divided with Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And now we have 2 kingdoms, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. When you read the books of Chronicles and you look at all of the prophetic books, you'll hear the prophetic books talk about the 2 sisters, and it talks about Israel and Judah. And it calls them 2 sisters because it says that you should have learned from your big sister. When your big sister went into exile, little sister Judah, you should have looked at them and said, "Oh, don't do that." But because you didn't look at them and you didn't listen, you ended up having the same fate because you didn't learn from your older sister. Clear enough. So Samuel was the last judge, I told you this, and the first great prophet. We see Samuel's life being chronicled in chapters 1 through 3. And we see from him being promised to him being born of Hannah. So if you look at 1 Samuel, chapters 1, 2, and 3, you're going to see the birth of the prophet Samuel. And you'll see the story of Hannah, the lady who was married, and she was the wife whom the gentleman loved, but he also had another wife. And the other wife she was very fertile and having babies, but she was also very messy. And so Hannah was loved, but she wasn't fertile, and the other wife was one that would just be a little messy in the marriage, be a little messy, and she would make Hannah feel bad because infertility was seen by many Israelites as a curse from God. Why? Because they had a promise that a Messiah would be born of a woman. So if you were infertile, then it was like God saying, I don't even want to take the chance that the Messiah comes out of you. And so when women were infertile, other women would look at them like, none, And so we see the story of Hannah. And Hannah goes and prays to God and asks God, she's like, I'll serve you. I'll do anything, God. You know what? I'll serve you despite whatever misery is going on in my life. So Hannah, Samuel's mother, then gets divided. She prays, talks to God at the temple, and then she came up and she got impregnated by her husband. And now when she had a husband, she promised the Lord, if you let me have a son, I'll give him to you. So that now this goes to show you that if you make God a promise, so all of us who promise God, if he save us and get us out of this mess, we give him our life. God said, I'm gonna ask you for that. All right? So we keep seeing that where God like, now you asked me for this. You told me if I do this, you're gonna do that. So don't front like this ain't brand new. So now we see Samuel then learning to function at Shiloh and working with the priest Eli, and he's working in the temple. But now, so they were functional, i.e., in having a temple and having regular forms of religious activity and work. But it also says, although they were functional in religious activity, they said people that hadn't heard from the Lord in a while. Why is this? Remember, we're coming out of Judges. And Judges, they were always getting with God and then falling off. So it's not a surprise that even though they have a temple during this time, they still are distant and don't hear the voice of God. And so Eli and everybody else, they're functioning as priests, religious activity, but not in terms of hearing God's voice. But Eli was not without God, because when Samuel heard God, he said, that's the voice you're hearing is God. So he recognized the voice of God, although he did not necessarily hear him. He said, "No, that's God. I can see him. I can tell you that's God." So understand this, young people, that just because that older person is doesn't seem like they're on fire like you are, there is wisdom they can share to you about what is God and what's not God. Because Samuel, like, I know I hear something, and I think it's you. So the voice of God sounded like his teacher, his trainer, his pastor. So when you say, Dr. Moody, what should God sound like? He should sound like your pastor. So we see this transition. So we have the prophet Samuel, who transitions us to the king Saul, who then transitions us to the king David. Clear enough. And now we see Saul, David. Now, David is a man after God's own heart. Saul is a man after the people's heart. Key difference. And so now we see that 1 Samuel shows us David's rise from a little boy who's a shepherd boy all the way to the king elect. So you'll watch this. So you'll see God use he uses Samuel to divinely select David, and he tells Samuel, he says God doesn't look at the things outside. He said God looks at the heart. People look at the outside appearance. So don't choose your leadership based upon how they look to you. Am I making sense? And so God chose the youngest son of Jesse, who nobody would think would have been anything. Jesse didn't even believe that he was anything. Because Jesse, when Samuel appeared, now you can imagine, the prophet Samuel comes to your house. The kingmaker himself. The dean of all the prophetic colleges. And he said, I came here to anoint the new king. And you bring every one of your sons but David. So that lets you know how he felt about David. And he lets the prophet hold the vessel of oil over their heads. And the vessel of oil, where there was anointing, the vessel of oil should pour. So he's holding it over their head, and the oil is not pouring. So if you ever consecrated as a leader, and during consecration, we hold the vessel of oil, and we try to pour it, and the oil say, I recommend at that time you just fall out. Have us drag you out. We'll start over a whole nother year. We'll try to get you right. No. And so we see we see a divine. Some of y'all gonna be nervous now, but you should be. You're like, oh Lord, please. Divine selection, and then we see David becoming a growing threat, because even though he's anointed king, notice he's king elect. He is not, when he's anointed, he is then sent back out to shepherd. So just because there's a prophetic word over your life doesn't mean this is the season for you to act in it. It took David many, many years before he became king. He was king elect while shepherding. He was king elect while playing the harp. He was king elect while ducking spears. So just because bad things happening to you doesn't mean you're not anointed. It doesn't mean God ain't called you. So David becomes a growing threat. And David defeats Goliath. The people love him. The people shout David's favor. Saul becomes more and more intimidated. And you see this growing tension between the king and the king elect. The outgoing and the one who we're transitioning to. And so now, but the years of transition show you the transition of Saul's demise and the transition of David's development. So you're going to watch David develop now. So that means that when you are called to be some leader, you never start, if you're going to be in the palace, you're going to be playing the harp, cleaning shoes, and ducking spears. You're not going in the rain. Am I making sense? So don't think that you with your anointed self, and I know the Lord spoke to me, he did. Go clean them shoes. Great. Yeah, all right. Play that harp. Serve. Minister. Meet somebody else's need. King-elect. Listen, be DoorDash. Take your brothers his food. This was the king-elect. King-elect, listen, run for your life, king-elect. Have a chance to kill the king, and let me look at your character. So now, growing threat, and then we have divine protection. So that God selects David. David becomes a growing threat to Saul. Saul becomes more and more intense and incensed at him, chasing him around the kingdom. And we see God keeping him protected. And he's using people to keep him protected. So now we see 1 Samuel 15:21. Has the Lord great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord? This is what we say. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. That's where you get it from, 1 Samuel 15:22. So when you wonder where that came from, that's where it came from. And it's the prophet Samuel talking to a disobedient king who is on his way out. So if you hear if somebody looks at you and says, obedience is better than sacrifice, that's not a compliment. They spoke a word over me. What did they say? Obedience is better than sacrifice. That's not a good thing. That means do the things you were told to do. Clear enough? So when we look at 1 Samuel, we see the prophetic viewpoint. I told you that already. And so obedience to God brings blessing, and disobedience to God brings judgment. You're going to see that all in 1 Samuel. Being obedient to God, good. Disobedience to God, bad. So we see transitions. We see leadership transition. We see that what God does with people who are obedient. So we see Saul being disobedient and David being obedient over and over again. And you see God's sovereign will, that God says, even with all of this, I'm still in control. With whatever you're seeing, I'm still in control. With spears being thrown at you, I'm still in control. And so now that means God, in 1 Samuel, God is never out of control. If you are being chased, God is not out of control. If you're being talked bad about, God is not out of control. If you're being accused, God is not out of control. So what we see is this progression in the lives of three main characters. Samuel. So the first 7 chapters are the progression of Samuel's life. The second 7 chapters are the progression of Saul's life, 8 through 15, and the third 15 chapters are the progression of David's life. So now what we see is this transition between these three people. So there's 3 main characters: Samuel, Saul, and David. Clear enough? That David learns this, thanks to God, that even though you are anointed, you have to go through tests and trials. And that's why I watch people, how they serve. If you're not a servant, you're not going to be a leader. You're going to be a terrible leader. So I watch people. If you can't serve, it's always your way or no way. I'll be like, oh man, you ain't gonna do well. You ain't gonna do well in the kingdom. I already know. And you might be gifted. But you might not be anointed. So we see David growing in leadership, and we see David having to exercise restraint, because he could have killed Saul several times. But his obedience and his heart for God told him, now you can't do that. Don't put your hand on. It says, don't touch God's anointed, nor do his prophets any harm. Even though Saul was coming after him, even though Saul was threatening his life, he still did not take it in his own hands to take Saul out. Am I making sense?
Thank you for worshiping with us today. If you're in need of prayer or someone to talk to, our online ministers are available for you right now in the chat. And we invite you to join us again for our extraordinary worship services every Sunday at 10:30 a.m., Sunday at 4 p.m., and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Central, where Dr. Moody teaches how to understand the Bible, and you can get your biblical questions answered. We look forward to connecting with you and ask that you subscribe to the R.O.C.K on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected to all the Rock is doing. Also, you can connect with us through our website at therockatx.org. Again, thank you for worshiping with us, and be blessed.